I am award-winning published photographer and journalist Evan J. Thomas, and I'll be bringing you badass artists from the genres of music, art, sports, radio, as well as TV and movies. On the Badass Podcast, you will hear raw, bold, blunt, and honest conversation-style interviews where no topic is off limits. Check out the show at badassproductions1.com and go to the On-Demand tab and pull up the Badass Podcast where you can watch or listen to your favorite show. Get ready, because I am Evan J. Thomas, and this is fucking badass. All right, what's up, everybody? Evan J. Thomas here, Badass Productions, Badass Podcast, here with Sahaj of Ra. What's up, man?
How's everybody doing?
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. It's been fun.
It's been fun. You're here in Joliet, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time you were in the area here? Well,
Chicago,
least, yeah.
I played, not Joliet, but I played Chicago 2 years ago with Maytal at Reggie's.
Yes, you did. And
3 years ago, actually.
Actually, I know one of the bands that opened up for you. I work with them.
Yeah.
Bullet to the Heart.
Sure, I remember.
So you have a lot of new music that just came out. You just had a new album.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that come out. And then also you've been working with a shit ton of bands.
Yep, working with a bunch of bands. It's been really, really a good, I'm focused on, reason why there hasn't been a Raw record for 7 years is because I focused on my career as a producer mostly.
And you've been working with, holy shit, I was reading some names. You had like Lejean, Witherspoon. You did some stuff with Motley Crue.
Wrote the last 4 Motley Crue songs for The Dirt, the film, the movie.
Awesome.
I've been just recording and producing the vocals for the new Nothing More record. Wow. And have a total of 8 Star Set songs that I co-wrote.
That's crazy. I mean, that's like very impressive. Obviously, you've been in the business for a long time, too. So, Ra's been around, I think I looked at it, was like 2000 is when you guys had your first
Technically,
album.
we named the band Ra in 98.
Okay.
So, it's been 23 years.
Damn. So you've seen a lot of change over that time in terms of the music industry.
Absolutely.
Obviously, a lot of it turned around with social media.
Right.
So, and then the past year or so, we had the pandemic.
Right.
So most bands had to kind of change their style and what they were doing with social media.
Yes.
So what did you find that was like a different niche that you didn't know, like really, say January of 2020 compared to what you know now?
I mean, I think just the idea of a live stream concert in general was something that I thought was sort of a terrible idea, but we ended up doing one and really had a good time with it. And it's interesting to try and make something that's supposed to be organic connect when it's in a digital form. Connecting to the audience is the hard part of that.
Yes.
But I don't think it's impossible, and obviously it's never going to replace being in the room with someone. But I think there is something that's going to come from live stream concerts, and I don't know what it is yet, but I think there's something that's going to come from
And I
that.
actually had this idea recently. So I'm kind of shocked that bands now, since the live streaming shows happened during the pandemic in front of no crowds, why can't you live stream a show now? And kind of have that option.
It's a weird thing to me because technology is so inexpensive now. I think within the next 2 or 3 years, the answer to your question is going to be that it's going to happen. Because I think once the streaming technology becomes something that's mobile and cheap
easier,
enough,
yes, correct.
as soon as you can, because right now we have an X32 on the stage that has a little thing that if you press that button, it will record the multi-tracks of the entire show. Just that simple. There's nothing required. It just takes, we have everything mic'd and all the guitars and everything are digital, so it's literally the entire show recorded multi-track if we choose to. And so the next step is well, what software do you need to run in order to live stream it and have the concert, sold to people who want to see it who can't be there?
Because that's kind of like something I was thinking about. I'm like, why can't that happen? Like, if I want to see you guys when you're in Denver or something like that, and I can't, and I want to, $10, throw it on there. It doesn't really cost me anything.
RJ from Hailstorm, he live streams just from his phone. He connects it to his drum set, and he just does the shows. Then you just watch him live stream the show from the drummer's perspective, and it's obvious that that's just going to start happening. I'm sure some major label is out there making a deal with Instagram to be able to have massive concerts live streamed for a price.
Yeah, I mean, it's going that route at some point, like you said.
Yeah, it has to.
Sooner than later.
It just has to.
I mean, you already have the YouTube stuff anyway, so it's kind of like, it's almost that route, but it's live, and you can see it, and then,
you can backlog it, and then you can put it up on your Patreon.
Yeah,
there's
there's almost a risk of overexposure, so you have to be careful. Obviously, if you decide to do this, you have to be careful of how you present it. You can't oversaturate the marketplace. You can't, be completely accessible all of the time. Personal opinion.
I was going to ask you.
And I think that becomes, a little bit of you have to be careful with the credibility of your brand at a certain point. But ultimately, if you do it the right way, if you're going out on tour and you say, out of 20 shows, 5 of these are going to be live streamed, and you can pay $10 and see the live stream, I'm sure you're going to get people.
That's true. You got that. And then with the rest of the social media kind of changing things in the past year, you had not just the live streams, but you had more Patreon stuff coming up. What kind of did you see started working for you guys as a band?
Well, working for us, we're not super active in that regard. I mean, I have a producer career. Ben has a career building his meditation and his sound bowls thing that he does. Scooter has his life in Louisiana. So it's not something that we're actively, we're reactivated because we just wanted to play again together and make music together and do something that we own, and just sort of try and do it on a different level than we've done it in the past in terms of quality and stuff like that. But we have no illusions of like becoming Shinedown or anything like that. We're just trying to, satisfy our own desires and
nothing wrong with Shinedown.
No, I'm actually.
I love those guys.
No, I'm actually saying we would never reach their level.
Okay.
Meaning, like we would never try and be as successful as they are. It would just require a total focus and dedication that we're not. We're not coming from that place. We're coming from the place of we want to make music, and we would love to reach as many people as possible, but we have limited resources to achieve that.
We have that, and like you said, you have lives, you have other aspects that you're doing. You're not just focused on just your music. You're focused on like you're producing.
Yeah, and I'm also focused on being efficient. So if we can get some good tours at the beginning of 22 in front of bands that I work with that have much bigger followings than Ra does, then that's probably a better use of our time than us coming out and headlining for months on end. Even though we're going to do this run and a couple of weeks in November as a headlining act, but that's really for our core audience. Our core 100,000 people that know us that are going to show up. And those shows are in some ways more satisfying for me personally because it's it's our fans.
Yeah.
So
you're not going like opening up for Seven Dust and
well,
it's mainly a Seven Dust crowd, but they.
But the thing is that the Seven Dust crowd, they may not know our catalog, but they probably remember Do You Call My Name.
Exactly.
So there's one of those things where they'll be like, oh, it's that band, and then we get to like maybe maybe they hear some other songs and they're like, oh man, that's good.
So is there specific bands that you would like to tour with? I mean, it would.
I try and leverage all my friendships in an unabashed way, but I think there's connecting rods musically between Seven Dust, Nothing More, Starset. Those are all bands that share DNA.
Amazing live.
All of them are great, and I've worked with all of them, and there's a connecting rod between what they do and what Ra does. So I think eventually I'll try and force them to take us out at some point. But I'm also not interested in like being out on the road for 2 years straight or anything like that. So if we could do a 3-week run with any of those bands when they headlined, I think we would be very happy.
That'd be awesome.
It would sort of like satisfy my need. But I also intend to make a new record, the record coming up, and I intend to sort of flip the script because this record's very pop oriented. I want to do the next record sort of on the metal side.
Gotcha. And speaking of the metal side, and speaking of some of your producing, one of the bands today, Red Star, you did their song STFU.
I've done all their songs.
Oh, okay, so you did
every song they're playing is a song I produced.
That's
but
awesome.
Those guys are really good. We share an entertainment attorney, Mr. Eric German, who's fantastic, and he brought them to me and said, hey, could you work with them and get them their songs? And Mike Lopez, who's the guitar player, had some really great riffs, and it just all came together for me. And it was very effortless. We got in a room and the songs just started coming together.
But I also kind of see that they're more hip-hop vocals compared to a lot of stuff out there, but there's more of that coming back in.
Yeah, so I think the rap rock thing is one of those things that
I hate to
There's a
call
very-
it rap rock. I still call it metal with some rapper.
I like it. I call it rap rock
Okay.
because to me that's a compliment. I love rap rock. I think Limp Bizkit is one of my favorite.
They are still one of my favorites, even though they
Yeah.
got shit on for 15 years.
Yeah, I mean they're dope as fuck, and I think the you know the rap rock movement at the moment is still trying to battle its way. You know, it's either Rage Against the Machine rap rock or it's trying to be what's on the radio trap rock, and it you know
Like a
it's still
Jared
not
Johnson.
really figured it out. It's not, to me. I haven't heard anybody. You know, Fever 333, super talented, really cool. But I don't think, for me, I haven't heard anything that they've done that makes me feel like this is the new line. This is the direction that the world is going to want to go. It's sort of like, okay, I hear high levels of talent, but not necessarily something that I've never heard before. You know.
Gotcha. So something you never heard before. Let's talk about the band The Who, HU.
Sure.
What do you think about those guys, a Mongolian metal band?
So when I first met Avery Littman at Universal Records, he used to separate albums. You know, this guy is massively successful now, Post Malone, you know, everything.
Oh, okay.
So
Shit.
this is Republic is the biggest record company in the world, and you know, when I first met Avery, he used to separate things basically in categories. And one of the things that he said is that there's a definite lane for things that they call novelty acts. I think the word novelty act sounds a little
Cheesy.
yeah, but there's an element of that to the Who. You know, to
well,
me,
totally.
it's something that's like, okay, we're taking this whole Mongolian thing, putting this on it, putting some fun, famous singers on it, and making something happen. But ultimately, you know, they're very talented dudes. They have a really cool vibe going on. I don't know if it's 6 albums worth of The Who is going to be amazing, but also my attorney represents them. He's super bullish on them. I think they're very successful because the timing was right, and there's nothing really exotic, you know, in the rock universe. Everything is very safe. So the exoticness of what they're doing is very palatable and sort of fun. And the songs aren't bad. They're not bad at all. It's just one of those things where I think the novelty part of it is something that's not necessarily super long living, you know.
So the one thing that you said was like 6 albums of doing kind of the same thing. Can a band really last that long without kind of changing their sound? I don't see that happening.
Well, the bands that are great don't do that. The bands that are great change their sound.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, you know, every band that I've ever had massive respect for has always taken massive risks. And I think that that's sort of the calling card of a great band. You know, everyone from U2 to Radiohead. I mean, anything that's willing to risk and change their brand in order to make an artistic statement and see if it can be commercialized, that's you know, you have to have strength to do that.
And another thing you just said, commercialized. I've been seeing more rock bands being in commercials. So like
Yeah.
Foo Fighters, and
Sure.
actually today I just heard, if you call Imagine Dragons rock, but
Sure.
there's a lot of that stuff that's popping up. Have you ever thought about putting some of your music into some of?
Well, it's not quite that simple. You don't just get to decide.
pick it.
You know, you get the music supervisors who do, who are in charge of what gets into a commercial and things like that. They're very selective, and they're looking at the charts and they're looking at the pop charts and what's on the top. You know, and does it fit the thing? You know, Nothing More famously has the Go to War song as the Planet of the Apes commercial and stuff like that. But that was something that, you know, they had to curate and they find it, and you know, not something that happens that quickly.
Have you ever thought about doing a movie?
A score?
Score, yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about it many times, and then I went and hung out with my friend who actually does it, and it's like, I don't want to take 8 months to write, you know, an hour's worth of music.
Well, you have sort of an in with your sister, don't you?
She doesn't really deal with the scoring part of it, but she obviously knows. You know, my brother would actually be the one more influential in terms of getting me that kind of work if I wanted it.
Gotcha.
But my buddy Tim Jensen does a lot of scoring stuff for film and television, and you know, it's just as competitive as everything else. And and the quality level, the bar, the requirements are much more stringent.
Jesus, I can pick your brain on shit for hours. And I know I only said 15 minutes and we're almost there.
Yeah.
So, new music, I mean, you said you have the new album that was out back in February. I played it a few times on my radio show. Got anything new coming up soon?
At the moment, we're just doing this tour, coming back. I have a single coming out that's a cover that I did with Jason Hook. That's going to be
My
a Ra
Fingers,
song with
okay.
Jason Hook and Keith Wallen. So it's going to be a really, really fun song, but it's not out yet.
And you also had the DMX cover that you did too. So that was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
The DMX cover was really cool with Adrian from Otherwise.
That's right. And I interviewed him here a week ago.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah. No,
So-
those guys are great. I talk to Adrian all the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. We got Sahaj of Ra. Until next time, rock on.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely.
I am award-winning published photographer and journalist Evan J. Thomas, and I'll be bringing you badass artists from the genres of music, art, sports, radio, as well as TV and movies. On the Badass Podcast, you will hear raw, bold, blunt, and honest conversation-style interviews where no topic is off limits. Check out the show at badassproductions1.com and go to the On Demand tab and pull up the Badass Podcast where you can watch or listen to your favorite show. Get ready, because I am Evan J. Thomas, and this is fucking badass.